October 27th school committee meeting to order. We'll start with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay. The next order of business is the Walpole High School student report, and we have Joy Martinez-Morelda here for us.
As the year continues to roll out, we have many new and exciting things going on for the students at Walpole High. For starters, many of the fall sports are coming to a sad and heart-aching end, especially for the seniors. As we near the end of fall sports, many seniors ready themselves to say goodbye to the sports that they love and celebrate all the hard work that they put into over the last few years. We wish good luck to those continuing the sports in college, and a congratulations to anyone who has played the sports this past fall. We wish all the best to those who have their upcoming senior night. As for clubs at the high school, many of them are starting off with a bang. The WHS Humanities Club is once again offering the Pets of Walpole High calendar, where students are able to send in photos of their wonderful pets, or even those who don't have pets are able to enjoy the pets of their fellow classmates by purchasing a copy. The Spanish Club had a wonderful karaoke session last Thursday where they sang their favorite Spanish song. During the month of October, in order to raise awareness for breast cancer, the WHS Random Act of Kindness Club is writing positive notes in order to encourage and offer support to the cause. A little more about the seniors. The seniors' last deadline for the yearbook last Friday was their baby pictures, where all seniors were encouraged to submit their favorite or cutest picture of themselves so that they can be put in the yearbook. The next deadline for the seniors is the senior blurb and the senior survey. Hopefully there will be some amazing quotes to read at the end of the year. Another important deadline for the seniors who are applying early for college is coming up really soon. November 1st is the earliest deadline for those who want to apply early decision or early action. While this is a really stressful time in some students' lives, make sure to show support to help them with anything they may need in order to make this somewhat taxing process a little easier. Thank you and have a good night.
Thank you, Joy. Any questions? Nancy?
Just a question. Talking about the seniors and the stress level. Are you a senior or are you?
Yes.
Are you doing okay?
Yeah, it's a little hard, but I think it's important to look at the long-term goal. So
Good for you.
you gotta take
Good
it
for you.
bit by
And thank you
bit.
for finding the time to join us tonight.
Joy? Excellent. Anything else? Great. Well, Joy, since we know you have so many deadlines, you are welcome to stay, but we won't be offended if you leave and get to some of your deadlines.
Thank you so much for having me.
Nice job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, our next order of business is a report from Chief Kelleher.
Yes, we have Chief Kelleher who here, and along with Officer Tommy Hard, who are here to present an update about our youth and our students in relation to what's going on in our schools.
Hi, thank you all for having us here tonight. So I'll go through basically what I had sent you in the report, which kind of highlighted, some substance use issues, some trends we've seen, and what we're kind of trying to do about some of that. So first, with substance use concerns, primarily we're seeing alcohol, tobacco, and marijuana, and THC vaping is kind of being the primary thing that we're worried about with this age group. It kind of goes without saying that substance use affects teenage brain development. It's synonymous with other risky behaviors such as impaired driving and things of that nature. Drinking, using substances at an early age can also have an increased chance of kids getting addicted to other things later on in life. So prevention at an early age, of course, is important. That's what we kind of focus on. Impaired driving is also a concern of ours. Kids from the ages of 16 to 20 are 3 times more likely to be involved in a fatal crash as it is. And then when you add in factors such as impairment, those factors go through the roof. So obviously, it goes without saying we're trying to prevent those types of behaviors. Current trends that we're seeing is vaping the THC oil, which has kind of been prevalent as of late. That's more at the high school, older age. Those kids, some of the younger kids are into more of the traditional vaping juices and nicotines and things of that nature. From what we've seen, it's not quite as widespread at the middle school level or the younger kids, but kids talk amongst themselves, and we're kind of getting the impression that that's kind of going on. So we're keeping an eye on that as well. In terms of alcohol consumption, we used to see house parties and kids sneaking beers into games. Now it's more of a trending towards hard liquor. We kind of think that it might be the faster effect on the body, easy to conceal in nips or things of that nature. So we're cognizant of that and trying to keep an eye on that trend towards the harder alcohol. It's a little scarier actually because kids that young and they're drinking the harder alcohol, it obviously has a effect, and sometimes they can lose control, and we don't want to see that happening. So house parties are still taking place. We don't see as much of it anymore. It's hard to kind of say why. Maybe they're keeping it together more, or it's happening and not in the open like it used to. We used to see the kids in the woods drinking and things of that nature. We don't see a lot of that anymore. But it's still definitely going on, as we're not naive to it. It's just, our calls for services don't include that as much as they used to, but we're mindful of that as well. In terms of prevention, as I've said, kids are still obtaining alcohol. We monitor package stores on a regular basis. Our detectives do that stuff in a plainclothes, covert way, to sit outside package stores randomly, not announce or anything like that, just to keep an eye on anybody that might appear to be underage going in, or you get the typical, car full of kids, and one kid gets out and buys, enough booze for 50 people. It's kind of pretty obvious something's going on. So, we watch that regularly. We've seen a lot less liquor violations, and we think that's attributed to higher quality fake IDs. These new IDs, actually, you can get them online, and they'll scan in the stores. So, unbeknownst to the package store owners or the liquor store, whoever, they don't know that they're not real. So that's something we're working to try to focus on a little bit. Some of our officers have gone to the ABCC training to become trained in doing alcohol stings, which is another thing that we haven't done since COVID, where we'd actually send in an underage operative into different liquor establishments, restaurants, and bars. That's kind of been peeled back since COVID, so we're going to start doing that again, but we need to get everybody retrained. So several officers just went to that training recently, and while they were there, they learned of this new how these fake IDs are really being made and how they're working. And so we're going to work on getting into a widespread training get more officers trained in detecting these IDs, so that way we're not looking at them quickly and saying, oh, it looks good to me, and moving on. So the training is going to be key on that, and see if we can nip that problem in the bud too. Also, in terms of prevention, we still have a long-standing affiliation with the Walpole Coalition for Alcohol and Drug Awareness. We've been with them for many years, starting with Chief Carmichael and actually Chief Stillman before that, and we still attend those meetings and work with Melissa and her initiatives, and we're certainly proud to do that. On our own, Officer Hart here coordinates our Junior Police Academy, and a good block of instruction during that academy is on substance use. And we purchased recently this year, right, a bunch of new ones, the Fatal Vision goggles, where the kids will put the goggles on, it'll show them what it feels like to be impaired, and they'll play different sports and try to figure out how to navigate it. And they really get a feel for how it can really affect your life. So we're hoping that, doing that along with the partnerships that we build during that academy, we can build some rapport with these kids and hopefully be role models to them to prevent them from doing these things and making better decisions. SRO Hart also takes the 7th grade health class to the Norfolk County House of Correction, kind of a modified straight program, I guess, if you will. A little bit of here's where you'll end up if you make some bad choices. So we take the kids in there so they get a taste of what that's like. And he also speaks with the health classes about alcohol and drug use in 8th grade, and did help them make better decisions as they get closer into high school, where peer pressures and things of that nature are only going to get more intense. I included in the packet a bit on overdoses. I'll kind of say first off, before I get into much about that, is that we haven't seen youth or students, or even really actually individuals that live in Walpole, overdosing on drugs regularly anymore. It used to be we had a faction of people that we would deal with regularly. That now it seems like the overdoses are more people that are transient. They work here. That they may happen to take a substance here while visiting somebody. It's kind of interesting that we've only had like maybe 1 or 2 residents that have actually overdosed, and no one has been under the age of 21. So that's a positive if you want to take that away from anything. But having said that, we still had 25 overdoses in 2021, and unfortunately 4 of them are fatalities. In 2022 so far, we're only in end of October, we've had 20 with 2 fatalities. So it's still there. We actually just had a double overdose 2 weeks ago, where one person went down, the officers were on scene, EMS was on scene, and the second person dropped right in front of them. And that could end up being fatal, we're not sure. So there's still some nasty stuff out there. Fentanyl is still around, and we're managing that. But our detectives have done a tremendous job of making some large seizures out of this community that has stopped the flow of drugs coming in here, at least for now. So as we all know, through the years, it's an ongoing cycle where we try to, stop that problem, but a couple of good seizures lately has really stopped that, at least for now. So we hope we can keep on top of that and prevent the stuff coming in. Let's see. Yeah, so again, with the overdoses, pressed pills has been a problem too, so people think they're taking Xanax or things of that nature, and it ends up being fentanyl, and unbeknownst to them, they drop. So that's kind of the trend we're seeing with drugs, so. In terms of your policies, I think you had asked me to kind of touch upon that briefly at this meeting, and, we went through them, and I feel that they're positive in an effective way to kind of manage alcohol and drug use in the schools and kids that get caught with them. We think it's both. I talked to Tom about this as well. We feel that it's important that kids have consequences, but also that they get that treatment. And that was kind of the one takeaway I got from that, is that the referrals for treatments, the encouraging of parents to get the kids treatment, and then keeping them involved in their schoolwork while they're out of school suspension, I think is tremendously important. So on the whole, I think they're a positive thing, and when I spoke with Tommy about it, we both feel that, the direction they're going with, and the way that things are handled with the schools, we're happy with. And the communication, again, with our department and the school department has been tremendous, and I'm grateful for a great relationship with Superintendent Goff and her staff, and, we're very lucky on that front to have that open communication. One thing that I actually didn't include in the report, and I was hoping to have more on it today, is our mental health clinician. We were supposed to have a candidate come in this morning, however, that individual was sick, so we didn't end up interviewing them, but we've been working hard to get a candidate to come in. We had one individual that was committed and then ended up backing out of the process, so we're back to square one on that. This individual seems like they're very qualified. I'm looking forward to meeting them, and I'm hoping that we will have this program online very, very soon. But in our calls for service for mental health, and so far this year, out of the almost 460 calls we've had, 211 of them are people under 21. So it's definitely affecting younger people, and that's what this individual that will come in is trained in both adult and youth mental health related issues, along with substance abuse outreach. Because right now, all of we're doing that all internally. Our detectives are doing all the outreach. So we're hoping we can have this person who's better trained, better qualified, come in and take that over for us, as well as handle adult and youth mental health issues, and maybe we can get the way these calls are handled, in a better place. So. Finally, in terms of school security, and I will leave some of this to SRO Hart, who does the day-to-day ALICE training, but we're in the middle of training, all the doing drills now, actually, and we've trained all the staff at the schools. And in light of what took place in Uvalde, Texas this past year, we conducted a department-wide training that was done by Tommy here, as well as Sergeant Pat O'Connor, who does a lot of our ALICE instruction, and then Sergeant Matt Crown, who's actually a Metro Star SWAT officer and is very knowledgeable in the tactical side of this. So we did a familiarization for our entire department based upon what is taught to the schools. So that way our officers know exactly what is being taught to school staff. So we are all on the same page when it comes to responding to these incidences. So we did a classroom portion that was extensive, so we would get refamiliarized. I just thought it was a good refresher, in light of what happened, that everybody's on the same page. And after we would going through the presentations, we did a hands-on practical portion out in our outbuilding where we utilized simunitions to do some weapons training and get a little more proficient in room clearing and things of that nature. That's a little more on the tactical side. But we did actually purchase through the capital budget process this year some more simunitions, and those are weapon systems that we can use to train with. They've been purchased now, so we're going to continue to train regularly with those and hopefully become more proficient. So if that unfortunate day ever comes, we're ready to go, and we'll just do that all internally. But in terms of the drills that's going on with ALICE, I'll let Tommy kind of speak to that, and he's a little more knowledgeable and the ins and outs of that right now.
Thank you, Chief. Yes, so all of the critical incident response training, or ALICE, was completed throughout September and then done by the early October. So we've trained all new kindergarten classes. Some of the schools chose to even have other grades go through kind of a refresher as well, which was nice. So kindergarten all got it, 6th grade, 9th grade. Any new students to the district as well were invited. And then all new staff members had ALICE instruction in the summer from Sergeant O'Connor, Sergeant Crown, and myself. So we were able to hit all new staff, and some of the schools are now reaching out for me to do refreshers with their teachers at staff meetings. So I'm starting to have a few of those come across as well, which is good to keep the conversation going, and to talk about different things that could occur where we could utilize all those different skills and kind of answers to problems that might arise. Now I sent out a sign-up genius to all the principals, and they responded very quickly. I almost have every school planned for a drill. As we had talked about before, we do 2 drills, one in the fall and one in the spring, and we can always do more as well if needed. We've moved more to, not giving them the exact time we're showing up. We want these to be more realistic for them. And then I have 2 to 3 scenarios that we have drawn up, so even I don't know exactly what they'll get. Could be an evacuation, could be a lockout, could be a shelter in place, and we want them kind of working through it. We've also started to move towards not just having the principals or assistant principals do all the decision-making, because they might not be there. They have leadership meetings, they have other things. It could be a secretary in the office, could be whoever's in charge. So we want other people being able to feel confident and make those decisions. And we did one last year, I believe it was Elm Street, and they did a fantastic job working through it and explaining what they were gonna do as we're there guiding them and stuff. So we've had a great response from it. We've really shown that it's not just for, the active shooter side of it, but it has answers for a lot of different things, building issues, environmental issues outside, and then also for medicals and, missing or dysregulated students and things of that nature. So we've definitely had a great buy-in, and the schools are using it, and it's helping to make situations that could become potentially, dangerous for, people if they were involved to kind of mitigate that and help to make sure that everything's safe and we're able to keep the school flowing. So we've had a good response, and it's a great partnership with the schools. They're very, very helpful, and, without all of them buying into what we're teaching, it wouldn't work. So thank you to everyone.
Thank you. Questions or comments?
I would. I'm just glad to have you here. I think it's an important thing for the community to hear that, first of all, that we work well together, but secondly, just that, we're staying on top of security. It's on people's minds at different points, and, I think that that's an important one. Going back to the underage concerns about drinking and drugs, I think the more we can do to be about education and prevention, the better we're going to be. You don't want to be the community that comes together after a tragedy. You'd rather do the prevention beforehand. And, I think that we're doing a good job with that. I think the health department is the third piece to that. And the Drug and Alcohol Coalition is one of those things that it's a really good place for parents to find out what's going on, because, it came together because of a couple of tragedies. And until it happens to you, you don't realize that. It's good to know some parents whose kids are a little bit older than your kids, so that you hear what they might want to be paying attention to. A few years ago, people didn't know what vaping was. And, the concern about how there are people who felt like, well, I smoked marijuana back in the 70s. How bad was it? It's very different now. I mean, the strength of THC is way different. And, the consequences are awful if it happens to end up negatively. My kids are older, and unfortunately, I've been to 10 funerals of kids who didn't make it to most of them didn't make it to their 21st birthday. And it just makes you want to be committed to the education piece of it. So thank you for doing what you're doing.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Bridget?
No, I just want to say thank you, because especially Officer Hart and Chief Keller, whenever I call, they pick up the phone. I think I've probably called you many times very early in the morning, and Rich very late in the evening. So they kind of split the difference with me. So it's really nice. And as a superintendent, that's really important to know that when I text or I call, that someone will pick up and get right back to me. So thank you.
Anything else, Sean?
Yeah, I'm just really grateful to be a parent of students that are able to benefit from the work that you guys do, whether it's in the schools or in the community with the community policing. my kids have been part of a couple of the stops where, they just come see kids playing outside and have stopped and joined in, given some little of the squishy trucks, whatever it is, but just creating a positive atmosphere with the students. And I think that builds respect growing up, as you guys do offer, advice into hard situations that, you guys have that relationship build up, and you've kind of earned the right to speak to those situations. So I'm really grateful for that and for the attentiveness that you put into presentation, and helping not just with that, but with our district stay secure. Thank you.
We appreciate that, thank you.
Nancy, did you have another?
Yeah, I had a couple of other things I was thinking about. I like the fact that at the high school, we reach out to kids and offer them help if they're addicted. That came up a couple of years ago, where I think they started with vaping, and I think that the nurses are really good at whatever a kid reaches out for in terms of help. There are programs that they'll connect them with, and they'll work through it with them, which is, I think it's just something really admirable. And then my other points are, I work in another school district now, and we got a message just, I think, yesterday or today about 911. You can text to 911, and I didn't realize that you can do, if you're in a dangerous situation, you can just press 1 if you want the police, 2 if you want the fire department, and 3 if you want an ambulance. So you can text and not have to say anything. I just thought that was something that we should publicize a little bit.
Yeah, that's important in a critical incident too. If people are stuck in a classroom and be able to communicate without having to speak, say anything, it keeps your, confidentiality and your cover, if you will. And we'll still communicate with the dispatcher. So the technology is incredible now with our 911 system. It's unbelievable.
And then the other one is the 988 phone number for suicide prevention, or, if you're in a situation where somebody's at risk. It sounds to me like it's a well-staffed and just another emergency mechanism that we should publicize to
Absolutely.
people.
And the kids, just speak to that, the kids do a great job, but the school does with the SOS program as well, where they have different ways. I think they can even text into it and stuff now. They have the ability to, or email, where they can, if they're worried about a classmate, they can reach out to someone and they'll check in with them. So I think that's a great thing to have, and, truly, it helps kids to speak up and really, step forward and say something.
Good point, because sometimes it's the kid who knows something sooner than the parent. The best friend or somebody like that, yeah. Thank you.
Carrie?
I just wanted to highlight that statistic that you mentioned, Chief Kelleher, about there being 460 calls so far that have been mental health related, and almost half of them have involved people under age 21. I just think that's really startling.
It is.
And I'm really pleased to hear about the mental health clinician that you're working toward hiring, and hopefully that person can be in good communication with our counseling staff in the schools, and hopefully partner and just be thinking about, I guess they'll have a different perspective on what they're seeing in the community and maybe trends and things that then our school staff can kind of work to address.
Right, so when we spoke with the last candidate, we kind of highlighted out how this program would work, and kind of tracking the trends would be part of that job. And right now, Lieutenant White does this for us on his own, as part of his job. He goes through and breaks down the calls, but he doesn't know exactly what each call, how each one made out, to a detail level that we can track a trend. This will happen now with this clinician, and I think as part of bringing this program online, working with, adults, programs as well, but then getting tied in with the youth programs in the schools and things of that nature are going to be very, very important, and to make it almost seamless, so that way they're working together as opposed to, no, we did this and that's the end of it. They need to be able to communicate with one another, make sure this is really effective, and I couldn't agree with you more on that, yeah.
Absolutely, and I think, I'm sorry.
Go
ahead.
excuse me, sorry. I was going to say the same goes with, we have the CIT meetings that we usually hold monthly, and the hopes is to have this clinician to kind of run those, and I've always invited all the counselors as a way to kind of pool resources and, with confidentiality, but to try to find, different place, an outreach or something where they can get support. So that'll be something that the clinician will help us with, and they'll have far more resources than, I will. So I think that's a great thing to continue as well.
Yeah, I mean, unfortunately, we all know that the mental health crisis among youth it's getting worse right now. It's not improving, and so I think we all have to be forward-looking in terms of what additional resources can we put into play. So I'm happy that this resource is going to be there, and that you'll be partnering with the schools on it. I think that's wonderful. So thank you.
Great, thank you so much. I also really appreciate everything that you guys have done and the partnerships that we have across all of the aspects of safety. It's, having someone who's now a senior who's gone through all the different schools and how that manifests in different schools, it's definitely much appreciated.
Well, we appreciate our relationship with you all, and thank you for having us here tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're going to have to wait. This long.
I know. Yeah, Rebel looks a little tired.
She was asleep when she came in the room.
You know we're talking about you.
Thank you.
Excellent, thank you.
See you, Tommy.
All right, the next order of business is a presentation from Mass Insight.
Yes, so our Mass Insight people should be coming up on the screen. I know that they're just all popped on. I can see them on my screen. So Mass Insight is here, and they're going to provide you with findings and recommendations from the recent Walpole Public Schools equity audit. Dr. Julie Shepard, I'll turn it over to her in a second, once we can get them on. And just to let you know that the leadership team is also in the process of reviewing these findings and recommendations. So this is why we have Mass Insight here to listen to their presentation and to answer questions. So I am going to see if they can hear me.
Julie, if you can hear me, I'm going to have you guys unmute.
So we'll see. I'll ask them to unmute.
Okay, here they come.
Here
Here they come.
Hi,
Hi, everybody.
Can you hear us?
Yes, we can.
All right.
All right.
So, and then I'm just going to hold up to see if Tamara can. How are we doing tomorrow, okay?
How are we
Julie, can
doing
you just
tomorrow, okay?
give us a 1,
Julie,
2,
can you
3?
just give us a 1, 2, 3? 1, 2, 3.
We good
We
in
good
there?
in there? Can you see Mary?
Are we good?
Good.
Just
Just
going to
gonna
turn up the, give it a
give it a
second.
second.
Okay, Dr. Shepard, I think you are good. Maybe do you want to start by introducing, and I'm going to share. I'll give you, make you co-host, are you going to share?
That's perfect, yes, thank you.
All right, you have keys to the kingdom now.
Okay, can you see the opening slide of the presentation?
We can.
Excellent. Well, good evening, members of the Walpole School Committee. The Mass Insight team wants to start by thanking the school committee members as well as district stakeholders for their interest and participation in the equity audit process. My name is Dr. Julie Shepard, and I want to quickly introduce the Mass Insight team members who are part of this equity audit. In addition to Courtney Gertz and Dr. Natalie Mejia are my colleagues joining me tonight, Krista Reed, Megan Rosenberg, and Artemis Wertz. We also want to take this opportunity to mention that Mass Insight team members' identities vary by race, ethnicity, native language, gender, and past experiences serving schools and districts across the country and abroad. Yet all of our identities, including our non-professional aspects of our identities, were leveraged to support our process and the resulting report. The team was intentionally designed to be diverse in multiple ways, not only to mitigate potential biases, but to also create trusting stakeholder engagement experiences for those that we interacted with throughout the equity audit process. During tonight's session, we hope to support school committee members and the members of the Walpole community joining us in person or virtually in beginning to build awareness and understanding of the equity audit that Mass Insight has conducted in partnership with the district over the last 8 months. We will provide a high-level overview of the findings and recommendations contained in the report and hope that the school committee members in particular will leave with a better understanding of how they can further equity and inclusion across the district to educate all students to achieve success, as stated in the district's mission. We want to preface our presentation tonight by framing equity and the work that Walpole Public Schools is already engaged in as a journey and not a destination. Equity is not something to be achieved and check the box about, but to be furthered, to work toward, and who intentionally seek in order to ensure that each student has access and opportunities to succeed, as well as preparation for their next steps upon graduation. Equity work is ongoing and requires all stakeholders to critically examine and discuss the extent to which decisions, policies, practices, and mindsets impact the experiences of all stakeholders. I'll now pass it off to Megan.
Thanks, Julie, and good evening, everybody. So the purpose of an equity audit is to uncover barriers that limit full participation and success outcomes for all students, and suggest effective ways to dismantle them, as well as to identify existing equitable experiences and practices to learn from and scale. Throughout this equity audit, the Mass Insight team, with the support of the district, gathered and analyzed data to identify strengths and areas for improvement related to diversity, equity, and inclusion. We engaged stakeholders in opportunities to reflect and share their lived experiences. And through analysis and synthesis and 6 months of research, the Mass Insight team has identified ways in which Walpole Public Schools can continue to refine its systems, structures, policies, and practices to more intentionally focus on equity. So on this next slide, we are going to look at sort of the scope of the equity audit. The first phase in March 2022 was preparation and planning. We established norms, expectations, and working relationships among Mass Insight, the district, and key stakeholders to prepare for the equity audit process. In April and May, we identified, compiled, and analyzed key data and artifacts related to structures, systems, processes, and outcomes in Walpole Public Schools. And then we moved into stakeholder engagement. In May and June, we collected and synthesized a wide range of experiences from students, families, staff, and community members through surveys, interviews, phone calls, and focus groups, as well as classroom observations. And then in the final phase, analysis and presentation of findings in June over the summer, we published and presented findings to district leaders and the broader Walpole community. And so we're at the final stage of passing the torch to you right now. Thank you, Dr. Julie.
We do want to take a moment to collectively ground everyone in a few key terms that are found throughout the report, which are equity, diversity, inclusion, and marginalized populations. These can be found on page 6 and 7 of the report if you'd like to read along. We're just going to read 2 of them out loud right here. The first of which is equity. And equity, as defined by Walpole Public Schools, is that every child gets what they need in our schools, regardless of where they come from, what they look like, who their parents are, what their temperament is, or what they show up knowing or not knowing. Every child gets what he, she, or they need every day in order to have all the skills and tools to pursue whatever they want after leaving our schools to live a fulfilling life. Equity is about outcomes and experiences for every child every day. The second one we want to read is marginalized populations, which are racial, ethnic, linguistic, social class, gender, sexual orientation, age, religious, cultural, or ability groups or other groups that experience discrimination and exclusion as a result of current and or historical social, political, economic power dynamics or oppression from dominant groups. Mass Insight is fundamentally committed to quality educational experiences for all students. We also intentionally focus on the access, opportunity, and success outcomes of marginalized populations to ensure equity for all. Our district equity framework is the lens through which we understand the current reality of district systems and the extent to which equity inclusivity is experienced by stakeholders, which includes district and school staff, students, families and guardians, community partners, and community members. Krista.
Thanks, Julie. We want to give you all a quick look at what stakeholder participation looked like during the equity audit across different groups, folks could participate and make their voice heard and their experiences known in a variety of ways. So with students, we had focus groups and surveys, and the same with families. We had a MetGo focus group, we had representative family phone calls and surveys. For both students and families, the surveys were translated into Portuguese, Haitian Creole, Arabic, Russian, Hindi, and Spanish. School staff, school leaders, and district leaders were also able to participate in surveys and focus groups or phone calls or interviews. And when we say there was a representative group or a representative sample, we mean that respondents ranged across the schools. They represented a variety of either grade levels or content areas. And for staff, there were also a variety of folks in a variety of school-based positions that ranged from teachers to school support staff. As pages 10 through 16 of the report describe, we examined a great deal of data from a myriad of sources during our analysis process. It should be noted that our team collaboratively and collectively identified the findings headlines from a synthesis and triangulation process, looking across all data sources. After the findings were written, we then collectively identified those key recommendations to support the district's next steps that were within the district's capacity and aligned with your current initiatives and stakeholder feedback. Artemis.
Thanks, Krista, and good evening, everyone. We're now going to dive into the much-awaited findings of the report. As previously mentioned, our district equity framework domains are how we collect, analyze, and organize our findings. The findings are anchored in the extensive data and artifact review, as well as focus groups, interviews, phone calls, and surveys collected from stakeholders throughout this process. With this, we'll turn our attention towards the first domain. So the vision, strategy, and culture domain, it is about the extent to which district priorities reflect a commitment to equity and promote a district-wide culture of inclusiveness and a belief that all students can learn and succeed. And so first, we'll speak to this first finding that's on the screen in the darker blue. When Dr. Goff assumed the superintendency in 2019, she engaged in a 5-month listening tour and found that there was a need to define WPS's vision. After extensive collaboration with the Walpole community, the district was able to adopt a values-based vision that Dr. Goff noted had a ton of buy-in from students, staff, parents, and families. The vision's focus on equipping all students with the tools that they need to become responsible, contributing global citizens and lifelong learners speaks to a desire for equity in the district. What's more, the district's focus on individual success acknowledges that success is not defined or measured in the same way for all students, and that different students may need different supports to achieve success. As we explore this second finding, the next slide is just going to give some context on the actions that the district has taken in support of equity. Dr. Goff repeatedly discussed the importance of ensuring alignment between the vision, strategic plan, and stakeholder actions. And it was this orientation that led to a strategic plan and implemented actions that are deeply aligned with the values espoused by the vision. I'll give you a moment to read over some of the actions that the district has taken, which are displayed on the screen. Now, although district and school administrators acknowledge that more work is required to further equity in Walpole Public Schools, they are proud of the partnership and progress that they've achieved with the strategic plan thus far, particularly considering the COVID pandemic impact. The impact of the strategic plan is currently experienced less holistically for some school staff, families, and students. Some staff feel that equity and equity-focused initiatives do not yet feel like the way the district operates holistically, seeing some professional development as boxes to check off. Students recognize some commitment to equity from staff, but very little from their peers. And so ultimately, the closer one gets to the student experience, the less the vision for equity is currently experienced. With this, I will pass it back over to Krista.
Thank you, Artemis. The second domain is data, which focuses on the extent to which the district regularly utilizes disaggregated data to identify and address inequities in the system, which should then inform decision-making at all levels. We know that data shows up in several areas of the strategic plan, which means that there's already an investment in the district's data governance. Leaders at the district and school level acknowledge the need to be digging into subgroup analysis across all their data sources. And from the school committee down to the classroom level, there's a recognition that the practice of disaggregating data in order to make decisions about the supports for students is an area for growth. Staff survey responses to the statement, I have sufficient training and access to disaggregated data in order to understand the extent to which student subgroups in my school are equitably succeeding, shows a need to invest in expanding both access and training for school staff, particularly teachers. It's important to note that 43% of school staff said they do not desire additional training related to data analysis, which might suggest that there's a portion of staff who simply do not have access to data that they need in order to know whether students in particular subgroups are equitably succeeding in their classrooms. So you'll see both access and training addressed in the related recommendations. Domain 3, accountability for equitable student access and outcomes, is all about the policies, systems, and practices that enable marginalized student populations to fully participate in school programs and activities that result in high comparable outcomes for all students. So in this lengthy section of the report, we focus on specific subgroups of students and their access and outcomes in comparison to their peers. We specifically examine data and the lived experiences of English learners, students with disabilities, low-income students, and also noting any meaningful differences in racial subgroups. We additionally analyze access and outcomes on MCAS performance, graduation and dropout rates, discipline, and access to academic intervention and support across all disaggregated subgroups. First, Walpole has experienced growth in terms of the percentage of the student population considered high needs. Nearly 1 in 3 students in the district falls into the high needs category. English language learners and also the percentage of students with disabilities have increased in the last 5 years. But the largest subgroup of students is now low income students. Nearly 17% of the students in the district are considered low income. We found that parents of students with disabilities do not always feel that they have the level of communication and collaboration with staff to meaningfully and effectively participate as full members or partners in their child's IEP team. While it's important for us to note that many families praised individual staff members or IEP teams for their work and partnership, which is noted in the full report, there was a group of family members who felt that they lacked information about whether their child was making adequate progress and whether their child's educational needs were being met. If we drill down into the student experience, we see more than a quarter of students who took the survey said that they disagreed with the statement, "My school addresses behavior issues fairly." Many staff also share this sentiment about student discipline needing to be a focus, because when we ask staff which policies, systems, and structures should be re-examined in order to further equity, student discipline was the most mentioned area. And it was more than the second and third most common responses combined. Student survey data indicates that middle school and high school students are aware of the vast course offerings available to them. They overwhelmingly agreed with the statement, "I'm aware of the advanced courses that my school offers." So while students feel aware of their advanced course options, there remain subgroups of students who are enrolled in advanced courses at rates far below the rate of enrollment within the district, namely students who are eligible for free or reduced meals, students with IEPs, English language learners, and African American or Black students and Hispanic or Latino students. And finally, when staff were asked to what extent they agree with the statement, our district has clear systems and structures for the identification and assessment of students needing specialized services, meaning students with disabilities, advanced or gifted learners, and English learners. Not all staff agreed. Julie?
Domain 4 is student readiness to learn, which is about the extent to which the district and schools create safe, positive, and inclusive learning environments for all students. This domain also encompasses students' non-academic needs and the extent to which they are supported so all students can fully engage and succeed academically. Our first finding recognizes that the district's priority to foster and strengthen students' social and emotional well-being, as indicated in the strategic plan, as well as one of the district's guiding beliefs to provide safe, inclusive, collaborative, and respectful learning environments. The second finding comes directly from student feedback on surveys and in focus groups, which indicates that most students report feeling safe and welcome at school, and marginalized students do not feel as included or like they belong when compared with their non-marginalized peers. This domain's findings, which start on page 43 of the report, indicate that 92% of all students reported feeling mostly or completely safe at school, and 89% of all students reported feeling mostly or completely welcome at school. When these responses are disaggregated by students' self-reported racial and ethnic identities, the responses indicate that non-white students feel less safe, less welcome, less included, less like they can be their whole selves when compared to their white peers. It's also worth noting that there is a spectrum of experiences for non-white students, as displayed there in the quotes that we included, some of whom feel they're treated better in Walpole than in their home countries, some of whom feel free to be who they are at school, and others who feel that they are treated differently by staff and fellow students because of their racial and ethnic identities. District investments in students' social emotional learning support, professional development for staff about social emotional development, the bullying and intervention plan, ongoing monitoring of student safety and well-being, high school support and preparation with post-graduation plans, and student support staff such as counselors, psychologists, social workers, and nurses are foundational in the district's approach to ensuring students are ready to learn. These already existing structures, practices, and staff can be leveraged to consider the ways to increase inclusive practices and mindsets, particularly to support non-white and other marginalized students so they can succeed academically and non-academically.
Domain 5 is focused on culturally and linguistically sustaining teaching and learning, which encompasses the curriculum, instructional practices, and learning environments that ensure school leaders, teachers, and other staff constantly improve and refine rigorous standards-based pedagogy that recognizes and embraces students' identities and the district's diversity. This first finding in the darker blue highlights the strong district-wide commitment to DEI, which was visible in the hallways and common spaces during school observations. The second headline under this domain encompasses differentiation, enrichment, remediation, and intervention, highlighting some intentional efforts by the district to better support all students in the classroom through the workshop model, increased benchmark testing, and a variety of resources available to students. Differentiation was more apparent in observations at the elementary schools and at upper levels, where consistent Tier 1 supports for all students are not yet systematically in place. The third headline focuses on professional development and teachers' cycles of improvement. Staff have support to improve their practice, including structures like PLCs and equity-focused professional development opportunities such as district-developed CR24 trainings that are available to teachers. This sets the district up well for intentional and long-term PD offerings that have a clear and measured impact on classroom practice. So this domain was heavily informed by classroom observations, in addition to all of our other data sources. As mentioned on the last slide, there is a visible district-wide commitment to inclusion and celebrating diversity. Beyond the surface level, observation data indicates inclusive classroom practices vary widely by teacher and classroom. In interviews and focus groups, staff describe the efforts that have gone into making the curriculum more inclusive, while also expressing that more support and consistency is needed, which was also echoed by students. On the survey, students were asked about their agreement with the statement, "The textbooks, lessons, media, and materials used in my classes reflect my identities, experiences, needs, and interests." Calling out students who disagreed with this statement, meaning they did not feel that classroom materials reflected their identities, was about 1/4 of white students, 1/3 of students of color, and 43% of Black students specifically. And the responses, which you can see on the right side of the slide from school leaders and staff, reflected this also. The majority were in that somewhat agree category, with a few fully agreeing and about 20% disagreeing in each group. We also looked for evidence of a strong practice of targeted intervention based on assessing all the students all the time. A lot of this connects to data practices, which Krista spoke about. We found in our surveys that more than 40% of school staff and half of those who identify with a marginalized population disagree that their school has effective monitoring systems to support students. At the lower levels, we saw different types of observable differentiation and universal design happening in the classrooms for all learners, in addition to that workshop model, which allows for kids to practice skills and get help in a lot of different ways. The older the students, the more we saw mostly classrooms where all students were doing the same work in the same way. There were a lot of supports and various types of interventions available. In particular, the students spoke very highly of the Wednesday intervention block, but there was room here for a thorough and data-driven system of ongoing formative assessments to ensure that struggling students are identified and supported with necessary interventions they need to succeed.
The family and communication the family and community engagement domain is about the ways in which the district and schools intentionally and authentically communicate with and successfully engage students, families, and community members. I'll give you a moment to read the 2 findings for this domain. And then on the next slide, we'll dive deeper with survey data and several family quotes that speak to these findings. And with this, we'll move to the next slide. The top half of this slide speaks to the existence of a welcoming environment for families. And so in family surveys, 85% of families reported feeling supported and welcomed in Walpole Public Schools. In survey responses and family interviews, numerous families spoke favorably about the friendly rapport and open lines of communication that they have with teachers and counselors. And that is just something to be incredibly proud of. At the same time, a number of families acknowledge that they have had this welcoming experience because they identify with the dominant demographics in the district. And so many families did advocate that culture and ethnicity, gender and sexuality, and religious practice be more intentionally attended to. The bottom half of the slide speaks to family communication and engagement. In elementary classrooms, we found that there were numerous opportunities for families to be involved in their children's learning, and families spoke to this as well. As students progressed to higher grade levels, families noted that these opportunities became less frequent. By the time a student reaches high school, families almost exclusively receive information like grades and schedules, and less information about how students are progressing socially and what's taught in classes. With less information about students' progress and development, families can find it difficult to support their children's learning at home, and school-to-family communication can sometimes feel like a one-way street rather than a partnership. Ultimately, families, particularly those families that are in the upper grade levels, families of students with IEPs, and families of non-English speakers, they're seeking more opportunities to be involved in their children's learning, as the vision for collaborative partnership with families describes.
The school management domain is about the ways in which district policies, structures, and systems enable school leaders to create the school level conditions that align people, time, program, and money to ensure the success of all students. These findings headlines indicate that school leaders feel that they have a good balance of support and autonomy in order to advance their school's priorities, given district support and allowances that take into consideration each school's context and needs. School leaders name the support that they receive from the district office and the open door policy between them and district leaders. The Leadership Council structure was named by both district and school leaders as key in really supporting district-wide alignment and collective problem solving. School leaders see themselves as the school's instructional leaders, and that they have been and continue to be developed to support strong instructional practice. They also feel well poised to support district and school initiatives and priorities, including furthering equity with staff, students, and families.
The workforce development domain is about the systems and processes to attract, recruit, cultivate, hire, and develop new and diverse staff, as well as the ongoing professional development that staff receive. I'll give you another moment just to read the two findings and provide more context for each on the next slide. And as we move to this next slide, the left half of the slide speaks to the desire for a more diverse workforce. In more than half of our student focus groups, students advocated for more male, LGBTQ+, and diverse racial representation on staff. Families echoed student sentiments, adding that staff members who have similar identities and experiences as their children can serve as role models. And staff members echoed student and family sentiments, but noted difficulty in attracting diverse staff. Two of the barriers that they named were public perception of a lack of inclusivity in Walpole, especially given the recent widespread publicity about the Walpole mascot name change. A second was just insufficient recruiting data to evaluate and adjust recruitment strategies. The right half of the slide speaks to the increased focus on DEI development with staff. And with this, we want to acknowledge and commend the district that increasing DEI development was an incredibly important step to take. These strategic investments in staff development support a more inclusive district culture. And moreover, increasing district diversity without developing current staff's understanding of inclusive and culturally responsive practices that would undermine the district's vision for equity and inclusion. And so things like hiring a half-time DEI director, contracting external facilitators to facilitate cultural proficiency trainings, and investing in an equity audit are just a few of the many actions the district has taken to lay the groundwork for advancing equity. Based on staff feedback, as you see on the right-hand side of the screen, there is a desire to build safe spaces to engage in DEI conversations, and also a desire for additional support to incorporate DEI principles into instructional practices.
This final domain, governance and conditions, is about understanding how district leaders and the governing board create equitable systems, structures, policies, and practices to advance the district towards its vision and mission, and the extent to which that reflects a district-wide commitment to equity. As mentioned in the school management findings, a clear foundation in the district right now is the collaboration of school leaders and district leaders through the Leadership Council and the awareness that district leaders have about school priorities and needs. Through this collaborative partnership, we also see examples of differentiated supports and conditions that recognize each school and student's needs. And the third finding in governance and conditions recognizes that the district's vision and strategic plan already indicate the district's intentions to create greater equity and inclusion for all members of the Walpole community, which is reflected in recent decisions and policies. We pulled a few key data sources here to further emphasize those 3 findings headlines. First is the school staff, school leader, and district staff responses to the survey item. Our district office provides school leaders and staff with opportunities to provide feedback to the district about services and support they provide, which informs decision making. These responses indicate that staff at all levels overwhelmingly feel that feedback from staff informs services, supports, and district decisions. Again, speaking to the efforts that district leaders make to be attuned to school level experiences and needs. The data on the right defines what Mass Insight calls conditions, which is about how a district differentiates allocations and structures such as staffing, programming, scheduling, and budgets that recognizes school needs and prioritizes marginalized populations. The quote that's included here actually came from a school committee member and really makes the clear connection between the school committee budget decisions and the ways or the extent to which budget priorities focus on student needs. The remainder of our presentation will focus on our recommended next steps for the district to consider in its equity journey. You'll notice that these are written in alignment with the current district strategic plan, mission, vision, and guiding principles, while being grounded in the findings. We took the district's context, capacity, resources, and current initiatives into account when designing these recommendations, which also includes in the report resources to leverage its next steps. I'm going to pass it off to Megan to talk about recommendation 1.
Thanks, Julie. These first 2 recommendations are in alignment with Goal 1 of the strategic plan to provide an engaging curriculum, differentiated instruction, and ongoing assessments for all students. Recommendation 1A is about leveraging staff development opportunities currently in place to strategically address district priorities in a way that is intentional, consistent, and connected. An arc of professional learning that is shared with staff will better support their understanding of where the district is heading, why, and how professional learning opportunities are connected.
The district will need to continue the work that it's doing to develop or invest in formative and summative assessments, such that staff in all grades and subject areas have access to that disaggregated data that they can regularly respond to in order to ensure that all the students in their classrooms are reaching or achieving that. The district's ability to monitor the impact of your collective efforts to drive towards equity depends on staff at all levels being able to regularly examine a variety of indicators in a disaggregated way. And we believe this is possible with an investment in those assessment tools and by giving educators the opportunity to learn from their colleagues, the ones with strong data practices and intervention practices, and making space for teams to share how they monitor and respond to student success data in ways that can be spread to all grade levels, to all content areas, and across schools. I'm going to hand it right back to you, Megan.
When we think about the implementation of recommendations 1A and 1B, which again are aligned with the strategic goal of providing an engaging curriculum, differentiated instruction, and ongoing assessment for all students, we have a solid foundation of strengths to leverage and some priority areas to focus on going forward. Setting and communicating clear expectations and a common vision for instruction across the district, supported by connected professional learning and robust data practices, will move the district closer to the mission of success for all students.
Recommendation 2 is in alignment with Goal 2 of the strategic plan, which is to foster and strengthen the social, emotional well-being of the school community in order to develop responsible and engaged citizens. Recommendation 2 focuses on creating clear expectations for family communication and engagement so that the district can solicit and leverage family feedback to support the academic and socio-emotional needs of students, especially those whose voices are marginalized. This would include the families of students with disabilities, English language learners, and low-income families. To implement this recommendation, the district should regularly solicit feedback and assess what families need to feel informed, aware, and actively engaged as partners in their children's learning. and school. And we want to, recognize that there are already existing family councils and structures, such as the school-based parent advisory councils, CPAC, LPAC, and METCO, that are attuned to the needs of families and could be a really great starting point for uplifting the needs of families. We also recommend that the district allocate resources, specifically time, people, money, and access, to ensure differentiated communication to support the needs of families of students with disabilities, non-English speakers, and low-income families. The existing vision for family engagement can be used as an anchor to make determinations about when and how resources should be allocated. Recommendation 3 is a meatier one. It's divided into 6 sub-recommendations that are all in alignment with Goal 3 of the strategic plan, which is to demonstrate a high level of cultural proficiency as evidenced by active promotion of diversity in all aspects of instruction, learning, and participation, thus ensuring equity for all and full inclusion of members of the educational and greater community. And so recommendation 3A, it provides a process for administrators to support teachers in connecting equity-focused professional learning to instructional practice so that inclusion and equity are brought to life in classrooms, thus furthering academic outcomes. 3B focuses on mitigating the barriers to staff diversification efforts. It takes a 3-pronged approach, which includes developing language around the district's commitment to equity that is reflected in all recruitment communication, identifying in-person and virtual recruitment locations and platforms that attract diverse applicants, and collecting data and progress monitoring each part of the staff experience, namely recruiting, interviewing, hiring, and the general day-to-day experience, so that the district can make decisions that support the retention of a diverse staff. Recommendation 3C extends this data-informed progress monitoring approach that we saw in hiring practices to all indicators of accomplishment in the strategic plan and school improvement plans. We believe that by developing key performance indicators, the district will be able to determine to what degree plans and actions result in measurable, equitable outcomes in staff practices and student growth or performance. Greater equity, it is achieved when measurable growth occurs or when performance or success gaps decrease among marginalized students and their classmates.
Recommendation 3D builds on others and is about continuing to build staff awareness and investment in the district's equity journey through opportunities to ensure the educational experience of all students reflects the diversity within the Walpole community. This can be done through ongoing conversations and learning opportunities around bias and cultural awareness that recognize that staff are on their own individual equity journeys, as well as the district's collective equity journey. Similar to the previous recommendation, recommendation 3E is about increasing awareness of the district's priorities with family and community members to ensure that all students have access to a high-quality educational experience in Walpole Public Schools. This process includes ensuring broad understanding of what diversity, equity, and inclusion mean in Walpole and how that's brought to life in classrooms. It also includes building awareness of data that shows student success measures and outcomes, in addition to data that shows where students need additional support to be successful. And finally, we recommend bringing more student and family voice to committees, particularly when reviewing current policies and when discussing how to create more inclusive learning and work environments for staff and students.
Participation in many aspects of the student experience requires fees, such as sports and music, AP testing, transportation. Many district staff described a fee waiver process in place to support students and families that might not otherwise participate, yet it's unclear to what extent families are aware of or utilize those fee waivers. So additionally, when it comes to advanced coursework, there's a need for the district to more deeply understand how staff make decisions about student course placement and how they leverage data to inform policies and practices to ensure equitable student access to and success in advanced coursework. And so, in summary, the 6 recommendations that are aligned with Strategic Plan Priority 3 are about intentionally leveraging ongoing conversations and opportunities with families, staff, and students to help build their awareness and engagement in the district's next steps. And in doing so in a way that leverages their experience, their identities, and membership in the Walpole community to create a more equitable, diverse, and inclusive learning environment that supports all students. And then in this last recommendation, which supports goal 4 of the strategic plan, to ensure facilities and resources support student learning and well-being, we want to focus the district's attention on supports for low-income students and students with disabilities specifically. We know that the district has examples of interventions and supports both for students broadly and also ones that have supported students from low-income backgrounds, such as Title I and METCO. We recommend that the district think about how to allocate resources in order to expand these kinds of supports to ensure that they reach low-income students regardless of whether they happen to attend a school that is designated as Title I or whether they are or are not a METCO student. Additionally, we feel it's important to name that the district should continuously monitor and plan for meeting the needs of students with disabilities, and we've seen evidence of the ways that the district has done that. Especially recently, and with the FY23 budget, there was an approval of 3 FTE special ed positions in response to some recent acute student needs. And we know that the middle school consolidation, out of district placements, and just shifting numbers and demographics district-wide in special education will all necessitate that the student or that the district and its partners regularly reevaluate programming and staffing in order to identify where long-term planning and resource allocation is going to be needed to address those long-term student needs, and ensure that the outcome gaps that we currently see for students with disabilities are being met with robust, high-quality programming. So, Julie.
So in summary, Walpole Public Schools has a strong foundation already established to continue and further its mission. By continuing to build upon the work already underway, all stakeholders, and most importantly, students, will experience a learning environment where the mission of educating all students to achieve success is experienced by every day by every student. We really want to thank you all for your engagement in this process, but more importantly, for your continued efforts and support for the district and all stakeholders, particularly students. And at this time, we gladly welcome your questions about the equity audit.
Great. Thank you very much. I think that was very thorough, interesting. I don't know that there were a lot of enormous surprises. I think, as you mentioned, we're on this great journey, and I think we sort of understand where we are, and I think it's great to have these guideposts and recommendations on next steps. Questions, comments?
There's kind of a question on process, or if we have questions, are they to be about like the audit itself, and like we're in the process of like processing the findings, and we're going to discuss this in the future? I just want to know where we're going.
Yeah, I think they're more for questions for Mass Insight, and then as we unpack this, that can be our discussion.
Thank you.
I do have one question. In Domain 4, a lot of the data was around how non-white students felt. And I wondered if you had disaggregated or could disaggregate the data on other marginalized students about how they felt about safety or inclusion in school.
We caught part of that question. If it's possible to repeat it, sorry.
Sure.
We caught some of it. Sorry.
Okay, so in Domain 4, the readiness to learn some of the data is about the non-white students and how they felt, and I wondered if you had and disaggregated any of the data or any information on the other marginalized students.
Krista?
I
feel good with that?
think the question is whether or not we have data about those aspects of student experience for other marginalized groups other than non-white students. And so I'm gonna respond to what yes, okay. So a lot of that data is coming from the student survey data that we collected. And we did offer students the chance to self-identify their racial and ethnic categories. Students were not asked about other parts of their identity on the survey, and so we were not able to disaggregate that based on other identity markers. So a lot of that data is just straight from survey responses and then triangulated with what we heard in student focus groups and conversations. When there are meaningful things in that section to pull out about other marginalized groups, they'll be there, but so much of it came from the survey. And so that's why you'll see the focus there on white and non-white students.
Okay, thank you. Other questions, comments? Carrie?
There's so, I feel like there's so,
Yeah,
much.
yes.
I feel like we could keep it here all night and go over this because it's very rich. There's a lot here. Very complex, lots of roads to go down. So I know we don't have that kind of time. So I just want to first say thank you for all of the work that you did. I know it was a lot of hours. You spent a lot of time with our various stakeholders to get as complete a picture as you can of our district. There were a couple things that I just wanted to mention that were in the report itself, but not included in the presentation, more so for the listening audience than anybody else. But one has to do with our staff. So in the full report, on page 53, for anybody who wants to review later, it says when asked what types of additional professional learning opportunities they desire, most school-based educators responded that they desired some or significant training in both culturally proficient practices and culturally and linguistically relevant instruction. And that was 100% of school leaders and about 82% of school staff. And I just want to point out that it's nice to see that our staff recognizes this as important and they actually want to grow professionally in these areas and continue equity-focused work. And then the other piece was on a couple pages later, page 55, talking about family attitudes, and it says it is a strength that some in the dominant demographic, although they feel welcome, acknowledge that more work can be done to ensure that all families feel welcome in the district. The fact that both the dominant group and marginalized families are oriented towards diversity and inclusion signals broad support for Walpole's equity journey. I just wanted to make sure that we had that stated publicly, that there is broad support for this work in the community, and I think it gives us a lot to think about in terms of how we go forward with strategic planning and budgeting and policy review. And I know all of it's going to take time, and we're going to have to make some decisions about what we tackle first and all of that. But you've certainly given us a lot to think about and a lot to work with, so thank you again.
Any other questions, comments?
I'll just give one comment.
Yeah, absolutely.
Thank you all. I know that we've been working many months. But I think that your point too that you had mentioned to us is that reading through this presentation and taking a look and looking at the recommendations that people want to rush immediately to the recommendation piece, and that's something that needs to be unpacked and possibly part of our strategic planning. Is to really take a look at that and digest it versus rushing to write to those recommendations. So I appreciate that.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Much appreciated.
All set?
Yeah, I'm also very grateful for everything.
Yeah.
I was gonna say thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you all.
Thank you, everyone.
So I can officially.
I think so.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. I'm out. It's frozen. I think they'll take it from here. Okay.
Okay. That was great. And then the next order of business is on to the superintendent report.
Okay, I have a few things here, a couple of things. In your packets, you have a copy of my goals for the 2022-2023 school year. As I mentioned at the last school committee meeting, that I met with the superintendent evaluation subcommittee to address these goals. And the goals focus on student and learning, district improvement, and professional development, and really aligning with also our leadership council goals. And my first goal focuses on, just for a synopsis, because I know you have it, focuses on the priority of working with leadership to increase proficiency in our levels in math. My second goal focuses on supporting and strengthening the capacity of effective and principal instructional leadership practices, really through an emphasis on 3 areas, and that's observation and evaluations, collaboration with coaches and instructional leaders, and measuring data to impact instruction. My third goal focuses on providing access and opportunities across all the schools. My fourth goal focuses on it's really a twofer. It's the middle school building project and the high school renovation. And then my fifth goal is my professional practice goal, which is continuing to focus on instructional leadership by engaging in professional development and also consulting with my local superintendents, which, during COVID, was tough to focus on, solely instructional leadership, but we can get right back into that. So it doesn't mean that I'm ignoring all the other areas. These are, like, I think as Carrie mentions, aspirational, right? And meeting with the school committee to reevaluate these goals because we know they need to be fluid as well. Also in your packets is the Walpole Public School improvement plans. We heard your feedback last year, so we made some significant changes. Everything this time is in one document, and there's consistency in terms of expectation and formatting across all the schools. So you'll see that consistency. There's an introduction. The district-wide goals are there, so you can see how the school improvement plan aligns with our district-wide goals. And then it's followed by the school levels. Within the levels, though, you'll also see common highlights across, the levels, particularly the elementary and the middle school. So, for example, in the elementary, you'll see these 3 commonalities, for example, in terms of curriculum and instruction. So the implementation of the Bridges Math curriculum, the utilization of the implementation of the English Language Arts curriculum, and then the database coaching structure to improve teaching and learning. For each goal, there are action steps, but there's also a separate column for outputs and outcomes. And if you remember, Carrie, you had mentioned that, outputs versus outcomes a couple of years ago, so thank you for that. So really what it is output is a process. So that's when you're tracking these actions that are completed versus outcomes. And really what outcomes are, they're result-oriented. What's the impact? For example, you might have, in terms of an output that you send somebody to, teachers to professional development, right? It's like, you check it, it's an action completed, right? But the outcome is you see what the PD was in, that particular component, and that principals go in and they see it actually being implemented. And another quick example is that you might have an output that we've all identified as a leadership council or leadership team, what engagement should look like, specific practices. This is what should be happening in the classrooms. The outcome is that principals are seeing it and students are doing it. that particular practice. So those are in there as well. I also want to thank Dr. Ana Vera Cruz, who last year assisted us in really developing this template. Dr. Cruz has a PhD in curriculum and instruction and over 8 years of experience in curriculum design and implementation in both the schools. She also works in hospitals and higher education. I think she's been most recently in Brown and Harvard. Most importantly, I want to thank the teachers, the parents, the principals, and the community members who dedicate their time to be on our school councils. This is volunteer, and it's a lot of work, and I think it's important for them to be recognized. I know there's a lot of reading, so please feel free to email me with any questions about the plans, and I'll get them directly to the principals and the school counselors, or Bill and I would also be happy to answer them. Another couple of things, just as a reminder, we've got parent-teacher conferences in swing. I think there's middle school tonight as I speak. Tomorrow is an early release day, and that's due to parent-teacher conferences. Mary wants me to remind everybody that fails the Leach, Rogers, and Kunde scholarships. Monday, correct, Mary, is the last day. They coming in? All right. They usually come in right at the last minute. And finally, I have a couple of congratulations that are hot off the press. We can be more than happy to have them in to recognize them. But our first order is I'd like to congratulate Mr. David Kajowski, Byrd Middle School science teacher, who was selected as a state finalist for the Presidential Award for Excellence in Mathematics and Science Teaching. This is the highest honor bestowed by the United States government, specifically for K-12 science, technology, engineering, mathematics, and/or computer science. There's two levels of this selection, the first being the state finalists and the second being the national. So for the state, there were only 5 state finalists, 3 in math and 2 in science, and one was Mr. Kajowski. So we had the STEM coordinators at DESE came to Byrd this week to acknowledge him in person, and we thank him for his hard work and commitment to our students. And second, on Tuesday, I was informed that Mr. Charlie Farrow won the MIAA Unified Track Coach of the Year. So that is a great accomplishment. If you remember, we have a banner in the gym of a National Unified Champion School. And this is really a wonderful honor for Mr. Farrow and the tremendous team of coaches, of support staff, and of student athletes. Like he said when he contacted me, he was saying, of course, I can't accept this honor individually. It's all of these people that really put this together to make this such a success. So we thank him, Mr. Farrow, for his dedication to our students in this program, and hoping perhaps we can recognize him along with his fellow coaches and support staff in the future. So 2 great recognitions.
That's excellent. Good. And I had a chance to look through a little bit through the improvement plans, and I agree. I think it was great work was done to address some of our concerns. And as Dr. Goff mentioned, if you have additional questions or comments, please send them to her. We'll get them to the get them to the principals. Any other comments or questions, Sean?
What's the process for the superintendent goals?
You can ask me.
No, I'm just mean, is this a reading and we're voting, or was that the action of the subcommittee to approve them?
We should probably accept it.
You want to accept?
We can
Go
accept
for
it
it.
next time.
You want to accept them next meeting?
We could view it as a reading.
Yeah.
Just-
Yeah, we can do that.
Do that?
Do we accept the school improvement plans on the same topic? We can just accept everything next time after we read it thoroughly.
Sure.
Doesn't hurt.
Okay.
Yeah. Doctor, my only question about the goals was just wonder if it would behoove us to include the review and synthesizing of the Mass Insight report in there as one of the action steps under the third.
Yep, since I'll already be doing it. That's
Yeah,
great.
well, that's what, looking for easy
under
things
goal
to
3,
check off.
right?
Well, and if you look
Codify it,
If you
yeah.
look at what Dr. Goff has under her third goal, there's a lot of it that
Yeah.
actually aligns with the recommendations of the audit, but I think you're right that explicitly, referring to it and making that connection is a good idea.
Yeah, thank
Say
you.
that same thing, Carrie.
Sorry to steal your thunder, Mark.
Thank you.
Anything else? No? All right, moving to old business, middle school building project.
Yes, so tomorrow we have what are called the 90% estimates. So the architectural plans have been drawn to within 90%,
Yeah.
whatever that means to an architect. And so they're sent out to professional estimating organizations, a couple of them, who will give us the estimates tomorrow. We'll then have, on the 1st, Compass, Tappe, Fontaine Brothers, I don't know, Dr. Goff, if you're gonna be there, to reconcile the estimates, because they'll be off by a little bit. One firm will see it one way and another firm will see it the other way. They will all sit down and reconcile them. They will be presented to the school building committee on the 15th of November, where we may have to value engineer, depending on how the estimates come in. And on the 18th, having reconciled all of that, we'll submit those documents to the MSBA, and that's kind of a major hurdle.
Yeah.
It is.
Hopefully no more value engineering, so.
Excellent.
Can I ask you a quick question about that? Does the MSBA have, or are they taking what we submit to them on the 18th and doing their own evaluation of that? Or are they just like, this, thank you?
I'm sure it has to meet with their approval in some way, shape, or form, but I know the first couple of rounds, I haven't heard any objections or any feedback from them. I'm not certain, that's a good question.
Because that might influence reimbursement, right? They reimbursement us in phases.
We'd have to value engineer within their guidelines,
Okay.
certainly, yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, they're certainly not gonna tell us that you should do this and not that.
Right.
As long as we feel as if we could justify it.
Okay. Excellent.
Just want to know when to breathe.
September of 2024.
Yeah,
Yes,
well,
exactly.
I guess let the breath out.
Excellent. Well, while you're over there breathing, do you want to give us the update on the high school renovation support? That might be another reason to hold your breath.
Yeah, well, no, I don't know. I feel really good about this. The other day, I had a conversation with the town administrator just about the funding sources and how he saw it playing out. You can tell there's a lot of collaboration in place between Dr. Goff and the town administrator to support the project and to help it to come together. So I was really excited about that.
Excellent.
We've got to see how the middle school, the value engineering plays out, and our
Right.
90%, just to make sure that we're fiscally responsible and getting this middle school to where it needs to be.
Excellent. Any subcommittee activity to report?
I think we reported on the superintendent evaluation subcommittee last time. We had it that night, that day, right?
Right.
We did, yeah.
All right. Seeing no citizens, move on to approval of the warrants and minutes.
Yeah, I'd like to make a motion to approve the following expense warrants for the amounts listed in your packet. That warrant number is 223016.
Second.
We have a motion by Sean, approved by Carrie. All those in favor? 600.
I'd also like to make a motion to approve the following payroll warrant for the amount listed in your packet, and that is 2315 PA.
Second.
Motion by Sean, second by Carrie. All those in favor? 600. Somebody like to take the gifts?
Sure. Make a motion to approve the following gifts and donations to Boyden School from the Boyden Pack: 25 headphones totaling $191.49, and Raz Kids Reading A to Z licenses totaling $256 for a total of $447 from the Boyden Pack. And to Elm Street School, Boyden School, and Johnson Middle School from Bay State Textiles Recycling in the amount of $139.
Second?
Motion by Carrie, second by Sean. All those in favor? 600. Would you like to take the minutes?
After me, Madam Chair, I make a motion to approve the October 13th, 2022 Superintendent Evaluation Subcommittee meeting minutes and the October 13th, 2022 School Committee meeting minutes.
Second.
I just have a correction.
Okay.
In the minutes. For the school committee meeting, the EL coordinator, her first name is Jill. So, with that change, I would second.
Okay,
Motion is amended.
we'll get that updated. Okay. Motion by Bill, second by Carrie. All those in favor? 600.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
Motion by Mark, second by Bill. All those in favor? 600.